Hello and welcome to our midterm presentation, Girls, Social Class, and Literacy. Our group members are Sarah Santiago, Sydney Munkelwitz, Estella Carroll-Ruiz, and Victoria McDaniel. An overview for our book. Girls, Social Class, and Literacy was a compelling read that dived into the inequalities women face every day. The book followed a study of 8 girls and showed how social classism affects their everyday lives. The author spoke about her own experiences growing up in poverty and used it to examine how class, gender, and public schools affect students mentally and developmentally. Critical literacy was mentioned heavily in its positive effect on students and how it aids girls in lower class situations. It allows students to share their experiences and engage in learning that reflects their experiences. Inclusion. Inclusion is defined as the action or state of including or being included within a group or structure. Stephanie Jones goes beyond this and challenges teachers to think of what inclusion really means for girls in poverty. She claims we need to recognize social class as an identity. We can do so in the following ways: acknowledge and honor every student's lived experience, create emotionally safe experiences, valuing diverse literacies, make social class visible, and teaching for empowerment. Diversity. When you hear the term diversity, people often think of ethnic and cultural differences. Stephanie Jones brings to our attention that social class is also a valuable aspect of diversity. Within the book, Stephanie focuses on expanding the meaning of diversity, literacy as a way to explore diversity, honoring lived experiences, teacher awareness and diversity, and diversity as strength. Course connections. This book has theoretical structures on culture, power, and inequality from our modules. The author reveals how a teacher might see a working class girl's inappropriate writing or unmotivated behavior and completely miss the surface or essence of their work. Moreover, the lives of the girls in the study were often governed by the unspoken rules within the culture, the concept of time, shaped by family survival and schedules, concept of self, intertwined with economic shame and the patterns of handling emotions in environments of constant stress. The author's work is a very clear embodiment of prejudice plus discrimination plus power equals oppression from Module 2. She shows that oppression in school is not always a matter of malicious intent, but unconsidered class prejudice, backed by the institutional power of the teacher and school system. Another direct connection, the socioeconomic status in Module 3. The book explores how 5 detriments of socioeconomic status, particularly wealth, dictate educational outcome. The families the author studied often had delicate incomes or negative wealth. Living in insecurity directly impacts a child's cognitive load and emotional capacity to learn. This reality shatters the deficit paradigm that blames individuals for their lack of mobility. Instead, the author aligns with anti-deficit paradigm and shows how structures like biased teacher expectations systematically guide working class students away from opportunities, while children that are more privileged benefit from a system designed to maintain their advantage. Course contrasts. The course shows a macro level frame for understanding educational inequality, while this book offers a micro level of how these inequalities manifest in the daily lives of students. The course defines concepts like oppression as prejudice plus discrimination plus power, and it splits socioeconomic status into 5 core components. The author, in contrast, gives into the reality of the classroom, giving a case study of that environment. This contrast between the macro and micro is evident how each address systemic issues. The course effectively outlines broad structural problems like inequitable school funding. The author shows that the large-scale systems we study are not abstract, but constantly being reinforced in the micro interactions of the classroom. Moreover, the author of the book focuses intensely on the classism. Teachers, as agents of the school system, hold the power to enforce middle-class curriculum and set expectations. The course provides the map, and the author of the book gives a guided tour. On to professional applications. In regard to how a teacher could apply this book personally, this book shows the depth of how teachers connecting with students is vital. Teachers can better teach their students when they understand their home lives and the circumstances that their students come from. Girls especially tend to have gender roles in the home, and often these are seen in the classroom as well. The specific background information given about each of the 8 girls in the book, as well as the information given by their mothers, was necessary in grasping their story. As teachers, professionalism doesn't just come in the form of a book and educational knowledge. Teachers' professionalism also comes in using ethics and methods to apply their students' life stories to their work to make their learning more engaging and personal. Community life applications. An important concept in girls' social class and literacy is critical literacy. According to Paulo Freire, critical literacy views readers as active participants in the reading process and invites them to move beyond passively accepting the text message to question, examine, or dispute the power of relations that exist between the readers and authors. It focuses on issues of power and promotes reflection, transformation, and action. Critical literacy and intersectionality were woven through this book and demonstrated how the 8 girls' stories were complex. Their genders, neighborhood, and social class all affected their lives. You can't take out one piece of their story be complete. The girls had different personalities and different lived experiences. An example of this would be the Where I'm From activity that was mentioned in chapter 1. This poem was an activity that modeled how the girls could share pieces of their lives and personal stories in a creative way in the classroom. Here you can see an image of the critical literacy that was shown in the book. Now we will move on to the personal reflections of our group members. We'll start with Sarah Santiago. Before reading this book, I thought an inclusive classroom was just about having diverse books on the shelf and using culturally responsive strategies. The author showed me a very underestimated layer, the deep impact of social class on a child's identity and literacy development. It showed me how schools often unintentionally cause class-based oppression. The book also forces you to confront the reality of poverty. The author doesn't treat class as a demographic category. She illustrates it through the girls' lives details: anxiety over a lost school fee, worn out clothes, shame, the awareness of a struggling parent, emphasizing that you cannot separate a child's ability to read and write from the fact that they might be hungry, tired, or worried about where they will sleep. The book made me move from the hero narrative that praises individual children for overcoming their background to challenge the system that make their background a disadvantage. This book has taught me that making a difference is not about saving students from their circumstances, but seeing them fully and reshaping the classroom into a space that affirms their reality and empowers them to critique and navigating the world with dignity. Next, we have Estella. Reading this book, it really educated me on how women and girls are treated and how their social class affects their perception of the world, as well as people's perception of them. This book really dove into so many different stories and accounts of girls' struggles with poverty and social class. It really challenged the reader on any past ideas or stereotypes they had on poverty. I learned a lot on how social class affects girls and critical literacy. It was also interesting to learn how public school systems affected these different girls and affect so many different women in terms of gender and social class. As a future educator, this book helped me to realize the depth in which things like poverty and social class affect young girls in school. And as an educator, I always need to take the things into account and be sensitive to these things in the classroom. One of my favorite things in the book I would like to take into my own classroom is learning about the lives of my students outside of school and where they come from. It is a huge part of who they are and is so important to do. Next, we have Victoria. This book showed me how one committed adult can make an impactful difference in the lives of a small group of people they come in contact with. The 8 girls in this book were able to open up and share the stories of their lives. Girls, social class, and literacy challenged my belief that school and home are two different worlds. This is not a separation of life inside of school and outside of school like we think. Through this book, I was introduced to the depth of critical literacy and its importance in my everyday life and education. The stories of some of these girls and the lives that they lived made me reflect on my relationship with my own daughter and the life I want for her. I also reflected back on the little girls I had as foster parent. Most of the girls I fostered were parentified, behind in education, yet emotionally resilient. Some of these girls had wonderful teachers who poured into them and were saddened when they moved. Their love for learning in school was championed by teachers who cared about their educational improvements and their personal story. As I continue in my educational career, I hope I can be an educator who doesn't only care about my students' test scores, but how I can hear their stories and viewpoints and impact the trajectory of their lives. Next, we have Sydney. I currently work as a first grade teacher, so I have a bit of experience. That being said, this book took it to a new level, what it truly means to connect with your students. The book focuses on teaching with empathy, awareness, and a willingness to listen. This is not only valuable advice to an educator, but valid advice for all of us. In any career, we often interact with the public, some more than others. Having this mindset in our approach to have everyone work to close the gap filled with division we have created over the years. I think this book is valuable for students, teachers, and professionals, and just people in general to read. In summary, the book talked a lot about how the social class shaped these girls' lives and experiences, and how civic literacy can help girls challenge the stereotypes that come with being lower class and help with acceptance. Educators can be a great tool to help students, as having positive relationships at school can help and aid students by getting to know their struggles inside and outside of school. These girls' lives, as well as everybody's lives, are shaped through experiences of the social structure around them, including social class. Girls, Social Class and Literacy was a great read and important for future educators. As future educators, it is important for us to think of students' lives in school as well as outside of it. Critical literacy is a great way to have students learn in ways that help them learn through their own personal experiences in their world. Lastly, we will finish with a quote from the book. As the girls were constructed as subjects within fluid literacy practices instead of objects within the rigid structures of education, powerful and moving events began to take shape. Thank you.